Hello, just me from the future as I'm editing this. Quick note, I understand this video is dreadfully long. I know. I got a lot to say. But I included chapters down here somewhere so you can click along to see your favorite movie. If you don't want to hear me talk about First Avenger, skip it. If you don't want to hear me talk about Winter Soldier, skip it. If you don't want to hear me talk for genuinely like 45 minutes about Civil War, skip it. If you like just want to hear the ending, like whatever. Use the chapters. You definitely use them. Don't watch the whole hour and a half of this. Hello. So, I saw Into the Spider-Verse last night. I might make a separate video on that, I don't know, but every time I see a Marvel affiliated movie, it's just like I'm pulled back into the Marvel world. So I'm kind of in it right now, and I want to make a video about Captain America. I just do. So basically, here's what I'm gonna be doing. Thank God that, oh, never mind, it didn't shut off. It's fine. Here's what I'm gonna be doing. I'm gonna be doing a video kind of deep diving into Captain America, his movies, why they're so good, why I love Captain America as a character, and just really just like deep dive into all of his lore because that's what I like to do. So I'm gonna start by kind of explaining why I personally love him and his movies so much. I'll give you a little like rundown of what you need to know, like his place in the MCU, why he's important, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm gonna go through each movie. I'm gonna watch it, and then because I remember some stuff, I don't remember some stuff, so I'll like really be remembering stuff, and then I'm gonna talk about each one individually, and then that's gonna happen. And I'll probably do like a little wrap up of all of it. And I'm not gonna watch like Infinity War, Endgame, even though those are pretty like Captain America heavy. They're just not his movies, so I'll probably briefly talk about them at the end, and especially like talk about how his arc ended in Endgame, but I'm really just gonna be focusing on his 3 movies in this video. So yeah. Okay, so my personal opinion about Captain America is he's one of my favorite Avengers, honestly. Like, other than like Wanda and Spider-Man, he's probably like, he's like definitely top 3 for me. He, first of all, like abilities wise, like my thing is like, if the person's superpowers are genuinely like genetically in them, then that's sick. If you just like put on a suit and you like suddenly are a superhero, then that's a little like, I'm like a little iffy on it. But like if it's genetic, I guess that's why Scarlet Witch, Spider-Man, and Captain America are my top 3. I like when the superpowers are genuinely like a part of them, and so he has that. He has super strength, that's like his thing. He's also just very like agile. He's strong and agile. So I love that, first of all. Second of all, his character as a person, he is just like a classic like American hero. That's kind of his thing. He's like a bring home to mom kind of dude. Like, there's an entire thing in the beginning of the MCU, kind of until the end of his whole thing, where he just like would not swear, and everyone roasted him for it. So yeah, he's kind of got that just like boyish charm to him. And he's just so great. He's like sweet, he's loyal to his friends, he's caring, and he fights for what he believes is right, even when people are telling him he's wrong. And I love that for him. He doesn't trust the government. Love that for him. He's just great. And then, so like as a character, I just love him. I love Steve Rogers. I love Captain America. And then his movies are just through and through so good. Personally, like the first Captain America, the First Avenger, is his first movie, and I love it. Like, it's so out of like what Marvel had been doing, and even like to this day, like still, it's such a unique movie, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a second. I just love it. I love like the time period. I just love it. And then the Winter Soldier is kind of interesting because I don't really recall a lot of that movie except for like the end of it. I remember the whole reveal with the mask and all of that, and that's so iconic. But Captain America the Winter Soldier is regarded as like one of the best Marvel movies ever, and it's the one I don't remember, so I'm excited to watch that one. So it's like I remember bits and pieces of it. I remember like Nick Fury fakes his death. I remember him. I remember Steve and Natasha like kiss at some point, and it's like, oh my god. But they just like don't even like, that whole plot is like cut off after that movie. It's just like bits and pieces I remember, but I know that it's good. So yeah. And then Captain America, his third movie, the Captain America Civil War, is genuinely my favorite Marvel movie ever. And I will say that till the day I die. I've said that every single time. If you ask me, my favorite Marvel movie is Civil War. Because I could go on about that. I can quote that entire movie. Just like, it's so good. It's so good. Everything about it. Like, I want to save the juicy stuff so I can talk about it when I'm talking about each movie individually. But that movie is so good. And it really brings out Cap's character, because I just like, Civil War is kind of like the two different sides. It's the team Iron Man, the team Captain America, and they're like arguing about the whole Sokovia Accords thing. And I just like could not agree with Cap's side more. And it's just like, it really shows his character, and I love it. So that's my personal opinion. Yeah. So getting into the movies themselves and like Cap's role in the MCU specifically, he is one of the 6 original Avengers, and his first movie was like the 5th. It might have been the 5th, because I think Iron Man 1 and 2 had been out by then. But he was like the 4th Avenger to be introduced in one of the solo movies. And it was the final one before Avengers happened, because Hawkeye and Black Widow didn't have solo films before the Avengers movie. So his was like the final puzzle piece to introduce us to the Avengers. And boy, did it. And so, yeah, he's just always been a key piece of the Avengers. He's like, I'd say like, if we're counting Tony Stark as like top tier, or like the number 1 lead, I think Cap's like number 2. He's like very important. So I guess we're just gonna get straight into Captain America the First Avenger. So while I'm pulling it up, I'll discuss, I don't know how to work this, I'll discuss this movie and its plot and kind of like what it's about. So basically, this movie starts in, I'm gonna say 1940. It's in the middle of World War II, and Steve and his bestie Bucky are trying to get into the military. Okay, this is very foggy, but they want to serve their country because they're teen boys, 20-year-olds. They might be like 20, trying to fight in World War II, and they're like trying to fight for their country. And Steve is very weak and frail and has like every ailment you could have. He has like asthma. He's just very skinny, not the real soldier type. And so he's not allowed to go to the army, I think. And Bucky got into the army, and it's this whole thing. They're like living in the 1940s, and then this man, Stanley Tucci Stanley Tucci rolls up on Steve Rogers and is like, hey dude, I've got something for you. And he injects him with super soldier serum. Is that how it goes? I don't know. But somehow Steve gets injected with the super soldier serum, and he comes out of this like machine, and he's suddenly like all buff, and he's Chris Evans. And then he becomes Captain America, and he becomes like this war symbol, kind of like Uncle Sam. He becomes like the Uncle Sam of World War II, and he has this crazy suit, and he's like performing at all of these like shows for soldiers, and the soldiers are like, who is this dude? And it's so good. It's so camp. And then he's trying to like fight in the war, and then there's something with like Hydra and the Red Skull, and there's like a reveal, and then the movie ends. that was such a bad. I don't want to talk about the ending. I know what happens at the end, but I'm gonna save that for the actual thing. So I'm gonna watch it right now, and I'll get back to you when I've finished it. About to start. Clearly, I've already watched it, but like, top secret research project turns. This is what he looks like. That's what he looks like, and he has asthma. This is him getting declined from the military. A very important character is about to be introduced.
You just don't know when to give up, do you?
I could do this all day. Oh, I didn't show it. Where is he? Does he just like evaporate? Oh, there he is.
Pick on someone your own size.
Eat him up, Bucky. That's Bucky Barnes. Remember that. There's Stanley. Oh wait, hold on. He's coming.
I got no right to do any less than that.
It's so funny. Hold on.
This isn't about me.
Right. Because you got nothing to prove.
There he is. That's Stanley Tucci. I don't know. I don't remember what he does. I feel like he's evil.
Yes, we are.
I don't know. Yes, we are. In this movie, there's a song called "The Star Spangled Man." It's so good, and I know every word that's about to happen. Who's strong and brave here to save the American way? And a war we must win.
Each one you buy is a bullet in the barrel of
Your best guy's gun. Who has you say? On the goose, stepping goons from Berlin. Banana, who will compare? Oh, that's Hitler.
You can't do that without bullets and bandages, tanks and tents. Now that's where you come in.
And the kids are like, he's right there, he's right there, he's right there.
Keep all the boys armed and ready.
Fox knows what we're fighting. Who in the giant, the Captain America? We know it's no one but Captain America who finished what they began. Who in the crowd to Japan? The Star Spangled Man with a plan. Do 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 do. Ticka ticka. That song is so good. Okay, so I just finished Captain America and the first Avenger. So I'm gonna talk about my thoughts about it, the story of it, all that kind of stuff. So if I had to like rate this movie, I'd probably it's hard. I'd probably either give it like a 5 or a 6 out of 10, which is, that's still pretty good, but it's just like the first half of the movie I love. Like, I really do. I love it. I love all of the like the process of him, you know, getting chosen for the army and like getting injected with it and all that kind of stuff. And then him being like this showy Captain America and then like going to save Bucky. I love all of that stuff. But then it basically after that just really turns into like a boring war movie kind of thing. And like I don't really care about the villain that much. Like I'll get into it in a second, but like overall the second half of the movie until the very end, like the last scene, I just don't really care about that much. I guess like the ending with like him going into him like crashing the plane and then him waking up 70 years later, like that, I actually like love that. But from there like back, I just don't really care about the war aspect of it as much. So that's why I'd give it like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. But the beginning half is like so good. Like I really love it. And the majority of the stuff that I remember from this movie is that part. It's just, this movie, it's interesting because I really like that it's like in the 1940s. I like that it's got that whole kind of vibe to it. They're all like, you know, you know how it is. Like I love the outfits and I love like him and Bucky going to like the expo and all that kind of stuff and them going on dates and like that. But it does feel very like disconnected from the rest of the MCU, and it's like, is this story basically the whole point of this movie is to kind of set up Hydra as a concept, because Hydra's like a main villain. Hydra's like a big company, evil company that comes back again and again throughout the movies. So it's basically like setting up Hydra, but like it's what like Hydra, what they just want to like rule the world. Like, there's no, like, reason or, like, motive, really. So it's just kind of, it's, like, a little boring. But and also, like, the beginning of the half of the movie talks so much about, like, Steve as a character. And then the second half is just, like, they don't really talk about it at all. And I'm like, that sucks. So I wrote notes about the movie on my phone, but I'm filming on my phone right now, so I'm gonna check those and I'm gonna talk. Okay, so I love that this movie's kind of like, it starts and it ends with current day, or at least like current day. It's like 2012. It starts with in 2012 because I think in the end credits or something of Thor or something, they discover like this buried artifact in the snow, and it's like, what's that? I don't know if they directly showed that it was the shield, I don't know, but that's how this movie starts. It basically shows that it's like these bunch of like detective FBI dudes. They roll up to this really snowy place in like the middle of nowhere, and they find this huge like crashed thing, and they're like, what is this? And then they go inside, and it's clearly like some sort of like not spacecraft, aircraft. And they're going around, they're like, what is this place? And then they find Captain America's shield sitting in it, and they're like, I found something. And then it cuts back to 1942, where Steve's trying to get into the military, but again he can't because he has asthma. And then he's like he's like really bullied because he's like very small and frail. But it really just shows, like, there's a lot of just like scenes in the beginning that just show that he has a good heart. Like, he's standing up to people and he never backs down from a fight because he's good-hearted like that. And then we're introduced to Bucky, who's his best friend, and that's very important. Bucky's a very important character. His best friend to almost a like next level amount. And so they're like, they're just like going around the 1940s together, and then they're going to, I think it's called the Stark Expo, right? Basically Howard Stark, who is Tony Stark's father, but since this is in the 1940s, it's like Howard Stark like in his prime. He's 25 maybe, no, what's 17, I don't know, it's 20, he's 28ish maybe, and he's got all these new inventions. He's an inventor, this kind of stuff. And so it's very cool to see like Steve interacting with Howard Stark, knowing that like how he ends up interacting with Tony in the later movies. Really cool. To go to the Stark Expo, they're trying to get dates and stuff, and then this guy shows up. It's Stanley Tucci. I think I said in the beginning that Stanley Tucci ended up being evil. That's not true. That's not true at all. I don't know why I thought that. I really did think that he turned out to be evil, but he didn't. Stanley Tucci basically is on the mission to look for a guy who they can inject with this super soldier serum. I guess, I don't know if it's called that, but like at the time, but they want to inject someone with this like powerful thing to like make them all bulky and strong, and so that they can be like a symbol for the war for America, to kind of like bring, oh my god, what's it called? I don't know, bring support for the country. Nationalism? No, I don't know. And so he's looking for someone who just like has a good heart. That's what he's looking for. And he finds Steve, and so he's like, this kid's got the best heart there is. And so he is basically Steve's ticket into the military. So Steve is finally gets in there. He goes into training, and he has to do all these like physical, like they like run, and Steve's like way in the back, so far behind everyone. They're doing push-ups and he can't really do them. But then there's like a few tasks where it's like Steve just like outthinks the other dudes, like the flagpole one, if you know, you know. And so like everyone's like, this dude sucks, he can't run, like why would you choose to bring him here? And Stanley Tucci, I don't know what Stanley Tucci's character's name is, so I'm just calling him Stanley Tucci. He is just like, look, he's got a good heart and that's what we're looking for. And so they take him in, they inject him with the serum, and he gets buff and he turns into normal Chris Evans and not the skinny frail little dude. So that's really cool. What am I missing? I'm gonna go back for a quick second because there was a quote I forgot to mention, which is like literally like sums up Cap's entire character. When Stanley Tucci first meets Steve, because he's like trying to test to see if Steve is a good person and can like good-heartedly lead the country to being more patriotic. And so he's like, do you want to kill the Nazis or something? He has something along those lines. And Steve he says, I don't want to kill anyone. I don't like bullies. I don't care where they're from. And that's so cute. He's like, I don't want to kill anyone. I don't like bullies. And that's just like, I just thought that was like such a perfect response, and that's exactly why he was chosen to be Captain America. And so then he was injected with a serum, and then he kind of like goes, it's so funny, there's like this whole like subplot for like 10 minutes in the movie, which I love, where it's like he has to go he has to go on tour around as Captain America, and he's like, there's these girls that are singing, and he's like, buy defense bombs, like bonds, support the country, and all this kind of stuff. And he's like struggling with fame, which I think is so funny. And that's like the stuff I love about the movie, not the war stuff. I love him going around and being like, who's strong and brave, here to save the American way, you know what I mean? So I love that. And then basically he goes to like an actual, like there's actual soldiers, a whole regiment, I guess, of soldiers. And so he's like performing them, and they're all like, boo, get off the stage, like, who are you? You're wearing like tights, you're wearing like a costume, and we're out here fighting. And so he's like in the camp, and he's like, oh, do you know where the 109th is, which is the thing that Bucky fights in? And this dude that's like running it is like, oh, think they're dead, like, we don't know where they are, it doesn't really matter, we can't go save them because then more people are gonna end up dead and it's just not worth it. And so Steve goes, Bucky cannot die. And so he goes, he ends up saving them, comes back, he's all like proud and smug, and he's like, I got him for you. And then the man's like, okay, Rogers. And then what happens then? He's just like being Captain America. This is when the boring part of the movie comes in. And then basically they're fighting Hydra, and then Hydra has this plane that they're trying to fly into New York City to do something. I don't know what. Do something bad. But it's like on autopilot. And so basically Steve gets in the plane and he can't like do anything about it because it's on autopilot, so he has to just like crash the plane. That's the only way he can get it to stop from getting to New York City. So that's the end of the movie, which I really love, where he's on a call he's like on radio with Peggy, and he's like flying basically to his death, we assume. And it's really sad because he's like talking to her and they're like, oh, we're gonna have a date soon, but they both know he's about to like die. It's really sad. And then he just like crashes and the thing cuts out, and it's so sad. And then there's kind of like a fade to black, and then he wakes up in this like room. It's like a hospital kind of esque thing, and so this lady walks in, and there's like a game from the 1940s playing on the radio, and she's like, hello, Steve Rogers, okay, she's not British, she's like, how are you doing, Mr. Rogers? And he's like, where am I? And she's like, you're in Brooklyn. And he's like, where am I really? And he recognizes the radio thing, knows that it's a pre-recorded thing and that it's not actually happening live, and he's like, where am I, what's going on? Turns out it's been 70 years. He was asleep in ice for 70 years, which is in the beginning of the movie when they were in the snow and they found the shield. That is the plane that was crashed at the end of the movie. Like, that stuff I love. And then so he's there and they're trying to like they weren't trying to trick him, but they were trying to ease him into the fact that it was now like 2012 and like he's in the middle of New York City in 2012, like Times Square. He would like have a like brain combustion, so they were like, let's try to ease him into it, but he sees right through it. He like breaks through this like little setup that they've made, and he runs out onto the street. He sees all the billboards and stuff, and he's like, oh my god, what's happening? Nick Fury gets out and he's like, sorry to startle you, cab, didn't mean to do that. And he says, you gonna be okay? And Steve says, yeah, I had a date. Cut to black, movie's over. It's just really good. Like there's moments in it that I'm like, yes, this is so good. Then there's just like sections where I'm just like, I'm bored. But yeah, considering the other Marvel movies that were being made at the time, I definitely think this is like a standout of a good one. Like compared to like Thor and Iron Man, I really like Captain America. So yeah, I also should state, I don't really know how to work this in because this isn't explicitly said in the movie, but it is a part of the Bucky Barnes lore. So Bucky was basically, he's gone for sections of the movie because he's off with his regiment in the war. And so during the part where this man tells Steve that like Bucky's regiment is like basically gonna die and they can't really do anything about it, they can't go to save him, but then Steve goes to save them. When the place where they all are during that time is the start of a lot of Bucky lore. So Bucky's story gets a whole lot more interesting when it gets to the Winter Soldier and oh, I forgot. Okay, I'm just gonna talk about Bucky now for in this movie because I actually just realized I forgot a lot of Bucky's story in the first Avenger. So basically, okay, during when he was like in where they thought they were all gonna die and like in captivity, Hydra was basically brainwashing Bucky. And so I don't know, the timeline's iffy, but definitely during that time they were brainwashing Bucky. They were beginning the process of turning him into, spoiler alert, turning him into the Winter Soldier. If you don't know, Captain America 2 is called Captain America and the Winter Soldier. So they began the brainwashing process, and I don't know when they started actually injecting him with super soldier serum. But at some point they did, and so he was secretly getting injected with that kind of stuff. But he didn't tell anyone, but like he didn't want, it wasn't his choice. It was like he was forced to do it. He didn't tell anyone though, and there was like clear scenes throughout the movie after that point where Bucky and like Steve will be like facing each other and they're like, yeah, and then Steve turns around and Bucky's face just like drops because he's like traumatized from this experience he has, but he's trying to keep it strong for Steve. And so it's just like details like that, so good. And so then there was a moment at the end of the movie, it's actually not that far in the end, it's actually like kind of more towards the middle, I don't know, it's like kind of in there, where Bucky basically dies. He falls off the side of a cliff. And so we all assume that he fell to his death. And Steve thinks he fell to his death. It's revealed much later that that's not true. Because he had serum in him, he didn't fall to his death. He simply lost his arm, which leads to a whole lot of other things. And I won't get too far into it because even what I've said so far is already like spoiling the next movie. So whatever. I'm gonna watch The Winter Soldier though. I'm very excited for this one because, to be honest, I don't remember a lot of the original Avengers movie, so I'm not really sure where I'm gonna be picking up at, because it's not gonna be a direct like right after where we left off in this movie, because like by the time The Winter Soldier starts, all the Avengers already know each other, so I'm gonna kind of miss all the introductions to each other and stuff, but that's okay, what can you do? So I'm gonna watch The Winter Soldier. That was such a bad burp. I'm really excited. This one is regarded as like one of the best Marvel movies ever, and I remember none of it. I do. I'm so excited for Natasha and Steve. I don't like ship them together, but I do think it's interesting. Hello. So it's been a little bit. It's been like 2 days since I watched first Avenger, and then I watched Winter Soldier, and then I watched like 30 minutes maybe of Civil War, and then it literally went until 4 a.m. So I then went to bed. So this is, I mean, I'm gonna be talking about the Winter Soldier. I'm gonna restart Civil War because I was like not paying attention when it happened, but I watched the Winter Soldier and it was good. I think I gave the first Avenger 4 out of 5 stars because I think it's a really good movie. I just personally am not as interested in the war aspect of it, and I think Winter Soldier is actually very similar for me. Like the beginning of the movie, it's not a war movie. I would say Winter Soldier is more of like a spy thriller, like sort of thing. It's like there's like a not company. What is Shield? Agency? An agency, I guess. I don't know. That they're all working for, but then they start to find that there's like holes in the system, and they're like, I don't know if Shield's actually that good, and like it's kind of all about that. And so I think it's very similar. I think the beginning half of the movie is really good and I really like it, but then the second half is a little more like I think I'm just not as interested in the like when they're like in the Shield office and they're like talking about like that kind of stuff. I like everything with the Winter Soldier, so I think I like this one more than the first of maybe more than the first Avenger. Yeah, but I think I'm still gonna rate it a 4 out of 5 because I just think that's fair. But yeah, I don't know. That's my general thoughts. So since that's like an overview of the movie, to go more specifically into it. So this movie picks up right after Avengers. So that's a Cap isn't a significant amount of that movie, but I skipped that in my rewatch. So basically, between when we saw him last in the first Avenger to now, he's getting more assimilated into the modern world. He now has friends that are Avengers, like Black Widow, who's in the majority of this movie. He now is like, he works with Nick Fury, who's the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D., S.H.I.E.L.D. is like, they're kind of the organization that the Avengers is like a branch off of. Like Nick Fury runs S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury is the reason that the Avengers were put together. So like the Avengers are kind of like an offshoot of S.H.I.E.L.D. And so like Nick has all these like secret projects and stuff. Or I guess I should say also Sam Wilson. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Sam Wilson. I keep forgetting their last name. Sam Wilson, who's the Falcon. He's introduced in this movie. He's hilarious. We love Sam, and I guess I won't get into that yet, but he is very significant in the Captain America story. And so we meet him, and that's all fun. And then like basically Nick is like, oh, we've got these new S.H.I.E.L.D. projects that we're working on. I'm gonna show them to you. And so he shows Captain America this like underground base that they have, where they have all these huge like hydroplane. No, I don't know what they're called. They're like huge like planes that they fly, and they're huge. And he's like, he basically says they're basically to stop bad people before they even do the crime. And Captain America's like, you're punishing them for something that hasn't even happened yet. Like that's not freedom. That's something, I don't know what he says, but he says that's not freedom. That's, I don't know. But he's against that because, you know, he's all about being a good guy. And I agree with him because, like, that's kind of insane. Like, they can't just, like, control everything like that and just be like, oh, but we're the good guys. We're doing it for good. Because, like, who knows, like, what those people that are, like, evil, like, who knows what they're doing. And so Captain America's kind of against the organized like Shield in general, he's a little bit iffy with it. Then a bunch of stuff happens. Nick Fury fakes his death, which is really cute. It's a really, I don't know, it's crazy. So then basically everything, like Captain America's like learning that Shield is not really as it seems. There's this whole thing in an elevator where he's with a bunch of Shield agents, and then they attack him. So it's like, what's going on? Can't trust anyone. But then throughout it all, there is the Winter Soldier, who obviously is in the title of the movie, and he has sort of like a masked identity. Like, we don't know who he is at first. And he is this project, I guess, that Hydra from the first movie has been working on. And he has been injected with super soldier serum. He, have I already said, I'm just gonna say it. I'm pretty sure I already said that Bucky is the Winter Soldier. Bucky Barnes, Captain America's best friend from the 1940s, turns out to be the Winter Soldier, and it's like this huge, like, shock. Like, I guess people knew, but I didn't know when I saw it for the first time, and I was like, literally dead. So throughout the movie, he has like a mask on though, so you can't really see who he is, but like looking at him now, it's so clearly him, so I don't know. But so he's like, he gets brainwashed into doing all these like murders and he's like a main villain that they're trying to stop throughout this movie, and they're like, we need to find the Winter Soldier and find him and kill him. I don't know. And then it's just like, he is so cool. Like, I know he's like killing people, but like he's like, just the way that he fights is so cool. And then they find him, and then they're like, he's fighting it's like a really cool scene. It's the Winter Soldier fighting Captain America, Black Widow, and Falcon, and like he like does this roll and his mask falls off and he stands up and he's like, and then Captain America's like, Bucky? And Bucky, or the Winter Soldier, says, who the hell's Bucky? It's so cool. And so like Steve is like, oh my god, like, what do I do? Like, Bucky's back and he's evil. And then that's like the whole movie. But it's like good. So yeah, I'm gonna watch Captain America Civil War now. I'm gonna start from the beginning and I'm gonna watch it. And I'm so excited. Y'all don't get it. This movie is so good. This movie is so good. Hello. I'm gonna move to the floor even though I'm low-key scared about bugs right now. I just saw quite a few large bugs on my floor, so we're gonna brave the floor. But okay, so I finished Captain America Civil War. It was just as good the 25th time. One detail I do want to add that I think I forgot to say for Winter Soldier, because I wasn't really paying attention at the end of the movie, not gonna lie, is Bucky Barnes at the end of that movie, Bucky Barnes / the Winter Soldier, is like kind of freed. Like, he kind of escapes I genuinely don't remember it, but he somehow gets out of the control of Hydra. Okay, that's why I had to add about that. But then Captain America Civil War is so good. It's the best Marvel movie. I watched it and I'm like, this is genuinely like every single plot point. It's just so up my alley. I'm not even talking objectively, honestly. Like, just everything. It's like they did that for me. Every single thing they do is so for me. So I'm gonna go through the notes. I do this every time. I write the notes on my phone and then I'm filming on my phone, and I have to check my notes and I'll get back. Okay, so I'm basically just gonna give you a rundown of the movie and explain why I love every single part of it. So first of all, the movie starts out so good every single time. It's chills. It's a slow fade in from black, and it's like a little fade in, and then it's like this icy landscape, and it just says 1991. And it's like, okay, we're in 1991. And so it gives us a little flashback to Bucky's past. So it shows him in his little capsule. he's being woken up from his sleep, because it basically, he's sent out on missions, and then once he comes back and he completes a mission, which is murdering people, he's put into this chamber and he's put in like a coma essentially. So that's why he doesn't really age. Did I get it? I don't think I did. It's fine. And so he's waking up, and this is kind of when we see a bit more of like the process of the Winter Soldier. It's pretty brutal, it's pretty dark. The Winter Soldier theme, it's so good. They basically, for, you know, every superhero has a theme that plays throughout whenever they like show up on screen, and his theme is essentially I don't know who said this, maybe it was like the creator of the theme, or it might have been like Kevin Feige or one of the Russo brothers or something. Someone said the theme is basically supposed to like mimic just like guttural screaming. So if you listen to the Winter Soldier theme, it's this eerie like thing, and it just like gets louder. It's essentially his screams as he's being forced into being the Winter Soldier. So love that. But his theme is so creepy, and every time it comes on, it's just like chills. So he's being waken up. They use this notebook that has a bunch of trigger words, which they read off in Romanian to him. He's like strapped into this machine and he's trying to fight it, but once he reads these words and he hears them, he turns into the Winter Soldier, and that's because of all the brainwashing that happened over the years. And so he hears the code words, he turns into the Winter Soldier. And so this is still in the flashback in 1991. He is sent out on a mission on December 16th. December 16th, 1991 is a very important date in this movie. He's sent out on a mission, and he is sent to go find more super soldier serum, more like packets of it. At that point in the movie, I don't know if it's revealed who he kills to get the serum, but I'll say it now anyway. He kills Tony Stark's parents, his mom and his dad, in a car. And up until this point, Tony believes that his parents just died in a car accident. Like, he doesn't know the details of it, so he's unaware that Bucky killed his parents. So maybe that'll come up later in the movie, who knows. But that's the whole flashback. And then after that, it gets to present day in like 2016. The movie came out in 2016, I don't know, it's just present day. And then they're in Lagos, and so excuse me, it's Black Widow, Captain America, Wanda, Scarlet Witch, a Falcon, and that's it. It's the 4 of them, right? Yeah. So they are all in Lagos, and they are trying to stop a man. It's Crossbones. Crossbones is like a superhero or a villain from the comics. He's not that big of a role in this movie, but it is Crossbones. He has like this nuclear weapon of some kind, and so they're trying to get it back from him. Basically what ends up happening, it's a really cool fight scene. There's a lot of stuff going on. It shows Black Widow's skills. It shows how Falcon is now like a real part of the team, because he had just joined last movie. Now he's really like slaying with all the flying, the suit and all that. And it shows Wanda is being trained by Captain America. There's like a part in the beginning where he's like, okay, Wanda, what do you see? And he's like having her like evaluate the situation around her so she can like get some training. And then there's a part where he needs to get into a building, and he's like, okay, Wanda, just like we practiced, and she like boosts him up. It's really cool. I really like Wanda, so that's fun to see. This movie, it's so good. Again. So basically all this is happening. It's all going well. They're like stopping the bad guys. They're doing really well. And then Crossbones, I think it's Crossbones. It's one of the dudes, but I think it's Crossbones. And Cap have this like confrontation, and it's revealed Crossbones was like working with Hydra a little bit, and he was there when Bucky remembered Steve, and he was like, oh my god. And Crossbones is like telling this to Steve, and Steve is like, he remembered. He's like kind of shook by this information. While all this is happening, Crossbones almost lets the nuclear thing explode, but Wanda encases it in her magic powers. She tries to contain it, but that's kind of hard, and so she accidentally like lifts it up and hits it into a building, which causes the majority of the conflicts from this movie, which is so stupid because I don't everyone made such a big deal. It's like, yes, obviously what she did was very dangerous and destructive, and like I understand that it wasn't a good thing to do at all, but had she not been there, had she not done anything, it would have just killed everyone at the bottom anyway. So it's like, at least she tried to get it out, but it actually just hit into the building. Would have killed the same amount of people anyway. It's like, hello, it's like so annoying. But anyway, that happens. Wanda immediately feels so much guilt for it, and it's crazy. What happens after that? It's that they're like in, okay, so I don't know specifically what happens after that scene, but who cares? Basically, here's the tea. They get back to America, and there's all this drama because the Avengers have just caused so much conflict, whatever, in Lagos. And so they write up this thing called the Sokovia Accords. Big deal. Basically, it's this thing that the UN has created to put the Avengers on a little bit more control, because at this point they're just kind of their own free thing. They see a problem, they go out and they try to fix it. And so the UN is like, no, we're gonna create a panel of people that are gonna decide when, where, if not, you're gonna go do something and like help people. And it's the Sokovia Accords, and it's like, if they sign it, cool, everything's great. They can, they can continue to do their thing, but with much more restriction. And then if they don't sign it, they have to like retire, or like they're gonna get like arrested. And so that's where the whole Civil War aspect of it comes in, because there's the team kind of splits up into two different sides, which is the Team Captain America, Team Iron Man, because they both believe the two different things. Basically, Team Iron Man is like, we should sign the accords, we need to be put in check. We are causing too much destruction, and we need someone to be kind of like more responsible for what we do. And then the Team Captain America side is like, we need to have the ability to choose when we can fight, where we can fight, who we need to help, and like, people have agendas. As Captain America says, people have agendas, and agendas change. And so they can't put all their trust into this panel of people that, for whatever outside reason, they may or may not send them to where they need to go. And they just need to do whatever they can to help whoever they can. That's the Team Captain America side. If you can't tell, I'm on the Team Captain America side, because I just think there's a few, it's just, yeah, it doesn't matter. I think both sides, what makes this movie really good is that both sides are logical, and I think it's like, yes, they are causing a lot of destruction, and like in the real world, like, yeah, they would have to have a little more control. But I completely see Captain America's side in the whole sense that, like, the government had wronged Captain America personally so many times, like organizations that he trusted had like turned to disasters. And so I completely see that side, and especially later in the movie when it became more about Bucky, I agree with the Team Cap side, because Team Iron Man didn't know the full story, and so like through and through I'm just Team Cap. So basically at that point they're presented the accords by the Secretary of State, and he's like, do what you want to do, but like there will be consequences if you don't sign. And so then it cuts to this scene where it's all of them like in this room debating about like what they think should happen, who they like, whatever. And so it's like, it's a very good scene. During that, Steve Rogers gets a text saying that his love from the 1940s, who's like an old grandma now, had died. Just like died peacefully, like of old age, because she's older now. And so that is kind of like weighs on him. And then he goes to the funeral, and Peggy's niece, Kate's her code name. What is her name? Is her name Kate? I don't know. The blonde girl. Kate. Is it not Kate? I think it's Kate. I don't know. She So she's the niece, and so she gives a speech, and the speech inspires Captain America and lets him know what his decision about the Accord is going to be. And she basically says in her speech, she says, she, to summarize, she's like, don't make people do what they want just because they think it's right if you don't think it's right. And she says, if when people tell you to move, say no and plant yourself a tree and say no, you move. That's so she basically says, like, make the decision that you feel is right, don't make other people pressure you into it. And that gives him the inspiration to be like, I'm not gonna sign these accords, I feel like it's wrong, and so I'm not gonna do it. And then, like, after the funeral, Black Widow gives him a little update, and she's like, okay, so Tony Stark has signed, Rhodey has signed, she's signing, Black Widow, Vision does, I don't know if Vision signed, but Vision, he's on Team Iron Man. That's who it is so far. And then the people who haven't signed, Clint Barton, who at that point had retired because he didn't want to deal with it, and I think that's so real. I love Hawkeye. And then Wanda hadn't made a decision yet, but she ends up being on Team Cap. Falcon obviously didn't sign, Steve didn't sign, and I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, okay, I guess I'll just say both the teams. Team Captain America, it's the 4 I just named, and then Bucky Barnes. Who did I miss? Steve. So it's 6 on each side. Steve, Bucky, Clint, Sam, Wanda, Scott Lang. Yeah. And then team is somewhere in there, I said the right names. Team Iron Man is Iron Man, Black Widow, Spider-Man, Black Panther, kind of. He's just really fighting against Bucky. But he ends up being on Team Cap. I got confused. And then Rhodey and Vision. So, yeah. If I missed anyone, I don't care. That's the 2 sides. And then, so she goes to the funeral, whatever, that happens. And then she's like, the press conference where we're signing the accords, like, right now, or it's like later in the day or something. And so she goes to Vienna where the conference is, and that's where we meet Black Panther for the first time. Prince T'Challa. He turns into king very quickly because his dad dies, so that's unfortunate. And so he's there, and he's like, thank you, he says thank you to Black Widow for, like, being so supportive, and he's like, I'm sad Captain Rogers couldn't be here today. And it's like, ooh, call him out. And then they go to the conference. Basically, at the conference, a huge bomb goes off. Someone sets off a bomb, and King T'Chaka dies, and so now Black Panther is the king. So that's obviously, like, that is a big plot point for him in the movie because his dad dies, and that's very upsetting to him. And basically immediately the news gets out that allegedly it was James Buchanan Barnes, Bucky, the Winter Soldier, who set off the bomb. Everyone thinks it's him. It wasn't him, but he was framed, basically, and so everyone just assumes, okay, yeah, it's the Winter Soldier. And so Black Panther is immediately like, I'm about to kill this guy. And Steve finds this out when he's back at Avengers Tower, where he was just consoling Wanda, and he's like, oh god, this is bad. And so he immediately goes to find Bucky. Bucky is just hanging out in Romania, and so he goes in and he goes to his apartment, and he's like, did you kill that guy? And Bucky's like, no, I did not kill that guy. And he's like, I don't do that anymore. And then Steve's like, well, the police are about to show up here in like 2 seconds. And so the police do show up. And it's like a big fight, it's big, intense, and there's like a moment at the end where, like, Steve's lying on the floor and Bucky punches the floor right next to his head, and everyone's like, oh, is Bucky evil again? But he's just punching into the floor to get a bag, and something, like, throws it, and he's like, nope, he's actually a good guy now. So that happens. Okay, I just read over my notes. I'm screaming. I can't. Okay, this is not what I'm freaking out over, but I did forget to mention the entire villain of this movie. So Baron Zemo, King, well, not king, but best Marvel villain literally ever. I believe he's better than Thanos. Like, I don't care. I think Baron Zemo is the best villain. He's so evil. He's so smart. He planned out this entire thing, and it worked so well, and it was so funny. Because the thing is, Thanos literally failed. He literally got, like, overtaken by the Avengers. Baron Zemo succeeded. He got what he, and it literally, like, it worked. So that's the tea. But basically, this guy, he works, I don't think he works with Hydra, but he works with some sort of like assassination group in Sokovia. And essentially his backstory is his whole family died during Age of Ultron, which was the second Avengers movie, which happened in between the Winter Soldier and Civil War, in which they kind of, the city of Sokovia was basically destroyed. And it wasn't the Avengers' fault. They were there, Ultron was destroying it, and they were there trying to stop him. They didn't destroy the city. People keep blaming the Avengers for stuff that was literally like the evil alien people's fault. Oh my god, I thought there was like a bug on the floor. Never mind. And so he is real upset about that, and he's trying to get back at the Avengers. So basically, he is not trying to directly attack the Avengers. What he's trying to do is rip them apart from the inside by like social like conflicts. And that's what this entire thing is. And so he is mainly doing things through the Winter Soldier. That's how he plans to tear the group apart, because he knows Captain America is no matter what gonna be on the Winter Soldier side, and with Captain America is gonna be Falcon. It's gonna be, I mean, Wanda, Clint, like all these people, like they are gonna be on Captain America's side. Tony Stark is absolutely not gonna be on Captain America's side, and with him is his whole team. And so Baron Zemo knows if he gets the Winter Soldier in trouble, it's gonna split the group apart. And so he frames Bucky for the explosion that I mentioned briefly. So that whole thing that he was framed for, that was Zemo's doing. And so he's basically planning for Bucky to get retaken by the police, sort of thing. And during all of this, he has gained access to the Winter Soldier notebook, in which all the code words, the trigger words, are listed, which basically, if you know the words and you read them out to Bucky in Romanian, then you have complete control of the Winter Soldier. And so he's doing that. And so basically there's this big fight as they're trying to go after Bucky, and then Captain America's there too, and it makes him look really bad. And the quote that I was just freaking out about, that I quoted in my notes, was when they're fighting, like Bucky he's like really intense or something, and like Captain America says, "Bucky, you're gonna kill someone," and Bucky goes, "I'm not gonna kill anyone," which is the way he says it. It was much better than the way I just said it, but he's like, "I'm not gonna kill anyone." It was like so genuine, and it's so sad, because he like didn't. He was so out of control. Like he didn't want to do any of the things that he was doing, but he was forced. It's crazy. There's this huge iconic fight. Like Bucky steals a motorcycle. It's crazy. They're like running through cars and stuff, and it's Black Panther is now going after Bucky because he's mad, because he's like, "Hey, you killed my dad," and Bucky's like, "No, I didn't." Then eventually they do get caught by the police. Rhodey goes, "Congratulations, Cap, you're a criminal," and then they get locked up. Sam goes, "So you like cats?" referring to the Black Panther costume. And then they get to, it's not a jail, it's just kind of like a holding place. It might be Stark Towers. I don't know, it's some sort of like shield place. And so they confiscate like the shield, Falcon's wings, all that kind of stuff, and Sam's like, "That's cold," and Tony Stark says, "Warmer than jail," which is like one of my favorite quotes. And they're just kind of there, they're just like hanging out. Bucky's been taken to a separate room because he's like, everyone thinks he's like clinically insane. And they take him for a psychological evaluation, I believe they call it. And so they're put into a room, and guess who the evaluator is? It's Baron Zemo, who somehow made his way into this position. I don't know how he got there. But while this is happening, Steve is upstairs and he's with Tony, and they're having this whole debate, and Tony like almost gets Captain America to sign the Accords, and it's like he's really close, and then Steve asks something about Wanda. He asks like a status update on Wanda or something, and Tony's like, "Oh, she's at the towers, and she's under confinement or something." And Steve's like, "Oh, Tony," in his Boston accent. He's like, "Tony, every time I think that you see things the right way, you just gotta mess it up." And Tony's like, she's he says they don't grant visas to weapons of mass. Oh, he says she's not from the United States, and they don't grant visas to weapons of mass destruction. That's what he says. And then Captain America says, "Oh, she's a kid." And Tony says, "Give me a break." And it's one of the best scenes of the movie. It's really good. I love him saying they don't grant visas to weapons of mass destruction. That was out of pocket. So there's a big blow up, and that like Steve like no longer gonna sign the Accords. He almost did, but he didn't. And then there's like TVs which are showing a live feed of Bucky's psychological evaluation, and they're watching it, and Baron Zemo's in there, and suddenly all the power goes out. There's this whole thing, it cuts away a lot of times to Baron's team who's like working to get the power to cut out, and so power cuts out, the live feed cuts off, and so then everyone knows that something's up, and so Steve and Sam, they run down, and they're like, Bucky's in trouble. And Baron Zemo starts reading out all the trigger words. It's very intense. And so he turns into the Winter Soldier, and it's like a big deal. And then they fight it out, whatever, and then it's kind of like cut to black. And then they like Bucky like calms down. He's like tied up to a thing, and it's just Steve and Sam are just there, and they're like waiting for him to turn back into Bucky out of the Winter Soldier. And they start to ask him questions about like what was he looking for, what did he want, and they kind of pinpoint that there's more Winter Soldiers. Essentially, there's like 5 more, and they're all in this warehouse in Serbia. No, that can't be right. Syria? No, that's embarrassing. I don't know where it is. But in the Iceland area, Greenland, I guess it would be. Iceland doesn't actually have ice, I don't think. And so that happens. They kind of pinpoint his thing, and then this is gonna take me 20 years, but genuinely, this movie's so good, and you need to understand every nuance of it. So then after that, this is when we're really revving up for the final fight. Or not the final fight, actually, the big fight, but there is another final fight. And so everyone, at this point, Team Cap has 5 people, Team Iron Man has 4 people, and so they're trying to even out, or like finish out their teams. So, Bucky, no, not right at all. Sam and Steve are like, Steve's like, we need another guy to fight or something, and Sam's like, I know a guy. That ends up being Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, but that doesn't happen yet. And so then it cuts to Tony and Natasha, Iron Man and Black Widow, and they're like, we need some more people, and oh my god, I can't think. Okay, and so they're both like, oh, I have an idea. And he's like, what's your idea? And she's like, he's downstairs. And she's referring to Black Panther. I believe it's Black Panther. And then he's like, oh, I got another idea. And they introduce freaking Spider-Man. Okay, so Spider-Man's introduced. It's epic. It's amazing. It's literally like perfect. I love it so much. And then so like Tony Stark is like, you ever been to Germany? To Peter Parker. You ever been to Germany? And he's like, no. And then he's like, we're going to Germany. And Peter's like, I can't go to Germany. I have homework. And I'm like, that's so real. That's so real. Then they go to Germany. And then there's this like big airport fight. The airport fight is like 15 minutes long, and it's so good. There's so many iconic quotes from it. There's like, hey, Underoos. I don't know why I said it like that. And then there's like Hawkeye being like, oh, well, I played 18, I shot 18, and made 18, something. Just can't seem to miss. And then he shoots his arrow and it goes past Tony's head, and Tony's like, oh, well, first time for everything. Hawkeye goes, made you look. And then there's cars coming down on him. So cool. And then there's like the one where Spider-Man's crawling outside the airport and Bucky and Sam are running inside, and Bucky's like, what the hell is that? And Sam goes, everyone's got a gimmick. And then there's the one where Bucky punches and Spider-Man catches his hand and he's like, you have a metal arm? That's awesome, dude. And it's really fun. And then there's the one where Spider-Man's sitting on the thing and he's talking to Sam and he's like, are those wings carbon fiber? That would explain the flexibility ratio. Which I gotta say, that's awesome, man. There's, in fact, there's not this much talking. Oh, my bad. And he's like, yeah. And then there's the one where Sam gets Spider-Man out of the thing and Bucky goes, it's so good. And then Bucky goes, you could have done that earlier. And Sam just goes, I hate you. I love that. And then there's the one where Spider-Man's fighting Captain America and Captain America's like, where are you from, kid? And Spider-Man's like, Queens. And Captain America's like, Brooklyn. And then there's the one where Hawkeye's fighting Black Widow and he's like, are we still friends? Oh no, she's like, we're still friends, right? And he's like, depends on how hard you hit me. And she like flings him. And then, or the one where Ant-Man is like about to like do the big thing. He like goes big and he goes, I'm the boss, I'm the boss, I'm the boss. I love that. And then, or when Ant-Man shrinks down, he's like inside Tony's suit and he's like, or Tony's like, who is speaking? And Scott's like, it's your conscience. We don't talk much these days. There's too many iconic quotes, and there's for sure more. I don't think Wanda has any good ones. Oh no, she says to Clint, you're pulling your punches, which is really funny. I'm trying to think of each character. I like the one where Clint goes up to Black Panther and he's like, hi, I'm Clint Barton. And Black Panther goes, I don't care. That's funny. Tony Stark definitely has some good ones that we're missing. Or he says to Rhodey, he's like, isn't it weird how you run into people at the airport? And Rhodey's like, definitely weird. So stupid. So that's it. There's actually something I need to flash back to. When Peter Parker and Tony Stark meet for the first time in his room, something I just need to point out is one of the best quotes Spider-Man says in this movie is, he says, Tony's like asking him why he does the things he does, like why he helps people in the city and like all that kind of stuff. Peter says, when you can do the things that I can do and you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you. That quote. And that makes me, I love that quote, but it makes me so angry because that idea is the entire philosophy of Team Cap. So like, if Peter Parker knew what was going on, if he knew the whole situation and he wasn't such a fanboy of Tony Stark, he would 100% be on Team Captain America's side. He's like, if you can do the things I can do and then you don't, it's your fault, which is exactly what Captain America's saying. Tony Stark is like, I can do the things I can do, but I'm not going to do it because the government's telling me not to. It's like, that's not... So I'm fully in belief that Peter Parker would be on Team Cap if given the full choice. But yeah, so then basically I should say the entire airport fight was because Team Cap as a whole, but mainly Bucky and Steve were trying to get to this aircraft carrier thing that they could take to Syria, Serbia, Greenland, I don't know where it is, the icy place where all the Winter Soldiers are being kept, so they can get there before Zemo can, so that they can stop him from starting his army of things, and it's like a whole thing. That's where they're trying to go. Everyone still thinks that Bucky's is guilty for killing or setting off that bomb or whatever, and that's basically why they're there. Team Iron Man has been sent to arrest them, and they don't even know the whole story, so guys, come on. But then basically in the end, at the very end of the fight, they're running and I don't know, something knocks down like this big pillar in front of the thing. Wanda is holding it up, and so she's like, they're running through so fast. It's Bucky and Steve who are running through. And then War Machine sets out this like alarm thing that like hurts Wanda's ears, and so she collapses to the floor. The thing falls down, but they make it just in time. And then, so in there, it's Black Widow, Black Panther, and then Steve and Bucky. And so Black Widow at the very end stops Black Panther from hurting them, because even though she's on Team Iron Man, she knows that whatever they're doing, they need to do. Which I love that for her. And she should be on Team Cap. Come on, Black Widow. She should have been on Team Cap. But it's fine. I understand her arguments. And so they get in the aircraft hangar, the plane, the Quinjet, that's what it's called, I don't know. And they go wherever they gotta go, and they leave the rest of Team Cap to be arrested, which, like, that's not like selfish of them. The entire Team Cap knew what they were getting themselves into, and they were like, yeah, we're willing to be arrested so that you guys can go and do your thing. So then Wanda's in jail, Scott's in jail, Sam is in jail, and Clint is in jail, locked up. And like, Wanda, should I say, is kept separately from everyone else. Here's the thing, I don't know if it's because she's a girl and they're all boys. I don't know if it's because she's a child and they're all adults. I don't think so, because she was under more security. So I do think it's because of her powers, probably. But that's so weird. Like, why would they be like judging, oh, because of your powers, you're gonna go to a different side? I just feel like that's weird. I don't know. But maybe it's because she's from a different country. I don't know. There's so many things that sets her apart. But she's kept alone. So that's like even worse for her. And then like Tony Stark somehow finds out all the truth about Baron Zemo and that he framed Bucky. And so he goes to the jail where they're all being kept. Meanwhile, should I say, this jail, it's a circular prison that sinks down into the middle of the ocean. Like, you cannot get any more maximum security than this prison. And so it like rises up out of the ocean, and Stark goes in, and he's like, or he walks into the prison cell where all the guys are being kept, and Clint Barton goes, "The futurist, gentlemen, the futurist, he knows all." It's like, he's so much making fun of him. It's so funny. And so Tony Stark goes in and basically admits that he's wrong. Thanks. Really great time to admit that, Tony. Thank you. They're already in jail. And so he goes up to Sam and he's like, look, I know I was wrong. I know I blamed Bucky when it wasn't Bucky. I just need to know where Steve and Bucky are so I can go and help them and get like the winter soldiers from stop them and stop Zemo. And so Sam tells him, because he's like, okay, sounds legit. And so this is like the big finale of the movie. So Iron Man goes to wherever they are, the icy land, and Bucky and Steve go in. Actually, I guess they all meet up at that point. They hadn't been that far into the thing at that point. So it's Iron Man, it's Bucky, and it's Steve. They all walk in, and they find all of the super soldiers that were there dead. They're all dead. And they're like, what's going on? And so then they see Baron Zemo, who's there, who got there before them, and killed them all, to put it frankly. He killed them all, and they're like, because at this point they don't understand what his motives are. They think that he's just some guy who's trying to start a army of super soldiers. That's what they thought he was trying to do, not what he was trying to do. What he was trying to do was get revenge for the whole Sokovia incident that killed his whole family, and he was trying to break up the Avengers. That was his main goal. And so he like killed all the super, like, those wasn't even part of his plan at all. He basically wanted all the conflict that he had already caused to happen, everyone, like half of them going to jail, them all being like discombobulated and all that. And then his final like punch in the gut was bringing those three there so that he could show Tony Stark a video of, you guessed it, December 16th, 1991, the night where Bucky killed Tony's parents. And Tony didn't know. Tony had no clue that Bucky killed his parents. And so Tony sees this video and he is essentially crushed. he's like very like to him it doesn't matter at all that Bucky wasn't in control of himself or that he was the Winter Soldier. He is just upset, and so he goes straight forward and just attacks Bucky. And so it's like Bucky and Steve against Iron Man. And like especially like when Tony finds out that Steve knew that Bucky did that, that's like it. Like they're like there's no making up for that. He's also there's a part I really like where Tony's like he's like he says like he killed my mom. Like that was like the unforgivable thing that he did, not his dad, which I kind of love because Howard Stark is like it's like who cares, but the fact that Tony was like he killed my mom, that's like I get it. And so there's like this big final fight, and it's all this drama, and then like Iron Man's kind of like defeated. It's like 2 against 1, so he kind of like is struggling. He's like on the floor, and as Steve and Bucky are walking away, Tony's yelling at him about his shield because Howard Stark made the Captain America shield. So he's like, "You don't deserve that shield. My father made that shield." And so he essentially like drops the shield and leaves the Captain America symbol so that he can protect Bucky. So cute. And what happens after that? Basically, everyone like it's kind of like a time skip. Like everyone kind of like goes back. Everyone gets it back home somehow. And Captain America and Bucky are both on the run, and Steve writes Tony a letter, and that's kind of like the outro of the movie. And he's kind of like wishing the best for Tony because like obviously that's a lot to handle, finding out that like how your parents died and like seeing a video of it of them being murdered, like that's a lot. And so he's like, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're in Stark Tower so that you're like with Rhodey, all your friends who are essentially your family, that kind of thing. And then he says, whenever you call, I'll be waiting. And that's the end of the movie, but like the very last shot when he says I'll be waiting, and it's like a voiceover, it's a shot of him outside of one of the prison cells. So it's basically showing him going in to break Clint, Sam, Scott, and Wanda out of prison. So by the end of that movie, they're all just on the run, essentially. And that's the end of the movie. It's so good. It's just so detailed and so nuanced. And every time something like kind of like concludes and like a plot is like kind of going, another element is added. And it's just so good. It's really so good. I thought I had like some overarching thing to say about Civil War, but I don't think I do. It feels, okay, this is what I want to say. It feels like an Avengers movie, but it's just so focused on the specific characters that I love so much. And that's great. Like, it's a Captain America Avengers movie. It's just so good. I love it. So, to wrap this up briefly, I'm just going to talk about kind of what happens to Steve in Infinity War and Endgame, which are the 2 movies that kind of finish out his character arc. And by the end of that, he's kind of done. And some people are like, is Steve coming back? And I'm like, I don't think he is. I think he's done. But basically, in Infinity War, it kind of starts off where we left off in Civil War. Like, they're all on the run. They're kind of off the grid. Wanda and Vision are together. They're like living in some random town. Everyone's like off doing their thing. Hawkeye's back with his fam. I don't know where Sam is. Bucky's in Wakanda. Oh, I guess that's probably something I should say. Bucky's in Wakanda, where at some point between the movies, he is cured. Cured, that sounds like weird. He's like, the Winter Soldier is just like removed out of his brain. Like, he's completely fine now. The trigger words don't do anything to him. And that's really cute. And there's a scene in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the TV show that was released like way after Endgame, where it's a little flashback and we see that moment happen. It's so cute. So he's there, and then Steve shows up. and he basically is there. He like saves Vision and Wanda, kind of. And then there's a part in Infinity War at some point where Tony Stark, at the end of Civil War, he was like, if you ever need me, I'll be here waiting for the call, or whatever he says. And so Tony Stark ends up calling Steve for the first time in like years. Like they literally, in between it, they had not spoken at all. Kind of tea. It's kind of good. And so they all meet back up in Wakanda, I believe. I think that's where they all meet up, and like Steve and Bucky reunite, and like they all meet back up with each other. It's fun. No real arc happens for Steve in Infinity War, I don't think. He just is there to support the Avengers and fight. He shows a lot of his moves off during the big war. But then at the end, if you don't know the ending of Infinity War, where have you been? But like half of the people get dusted by Thanos. And so Steve does not. Steve doesn't get dusted, but Bucky does, which is like Bucky is the first person, and Bucky's the first person to get dusted, and it's so devastating. Like the first time you see that scene, it's like a moment where you see Bucky coming towards Steve, and he goes, Steve, and then he's like it's crazy because he's like the first one ever. That's when everyone realized what was happening. It's crazy. And so Steve basically watched Bucky disintegrate. Sam also disintegrated. I don't specifically remember his, but he definitely did get snapped. And that's all that matters. It's basically those two and Steve are like the core of the Captain America movies. I guess Wanda gets snapped too, but at this point Civil War was mainly like Captain America, like Steve was training Wanda. He was like, they were really close together. He felt bad for her because like she had gone through a lot, and he was like her main mentor. At this point they had been apart for a long time, and like he came to save her, so like that's good, but they weren't really as much of like a duo anymore, so he didn't really care that Wanda died. Who cares? So that's what happens in Infinity War. And then Endgame, we see Steve, he's like in a support group. It's 5 years later, by the way, if you don't know what happens. The blip happened for 5 years. And so that's the tea. And then Steve comes back to help them all fight Thanos. What was he didn't help with the time travel stuff. What was he doing? I guess there's a part he goes back and fights himself. There's like a lot of time travel in Endgame, and so he goes back to fight himself, and like his past self is like, okay, haha, Loki, I see you, because like Loki's a shapeshifter, so obviously his first thought wasn't like, oh, it's me from the future. It's like, no. So he like fights himself, and then there's I don't know if I mentioned this before, but in The Winter Soldier there's this elevator scene where Steve is attacked by S.H.I.E.L.D. officers, people that he thought he could trust, but he couldn't, and that sets up a lot of his like government non-trusting sort of things. And so in Endgame, he time travels back to that moment, and having the hindsight of like knowing what happened in that moment, he stands there in the elevator and he goes, "Hail Hydra," which it basically, since all those people were working for Hydra and teaming up against them, and they were like, oh my god, he's on our side, Captain America is on Hydra's side. And so they don't attack him, and he gets out with the briefcase and he's like, doo, 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 and he looks so smug, and it's so funny. And then it's kind of all that happens, like Black Widow dies, I guess he's sad about that. This part doesn't really matter for him. There's like the big battle, he's really fighting hard. He gets to do the big Avengers assemble. He is the one to say it. I'm so happy he said it and not Iron Man. I'm so happy about that. And then, Tony Stark dies. Who cares? He's like you know, basically that all kind of happens. And then the very end is what we really need to talk about. So it's Steve, Sam, and Bucky. They're all at this little like time travel port. And so Sam and Bucky are like, okay, Steve, just take this briefcase back and just like put it back. I don't know what it is, but they're just like, put it back in the time it was supposed to be, and it acts like nothing that we did here even happened. And so they do that, and essentially Steve comes back and he's an old man, and everyone's like, what's happening? And basically what he did, he went back to the 40s where he was supposed to be, and he stayed there, and he lived out his life how it was meant to be. He got to live a life with Peggy, he got to grow old with her, he got married with her, and they just had a nice little life together, as if all of the other stuff hadn't happened. And it's like, and that's kind of like the end of his arc. His arc and Tony's arc are kind of like the antithesis of each other, because the whole thing is like, Tony Stark's whole story, he's been very selfish, very narcissistic. That's kind of his character, whatever. And so in the end, he is selfless. Like, that's his final thing before he dies, is he's very selfless. He gives up his life to do the reverse, the snap and everything, kill all the evil people, and then he dies. And I think that's a great ending for him. And Steve's kind of the opposite of that, because his whole life, all he's ever done is done stuff for others. He's very giving, he cares about people. And then in the end, his story ends with him taking that time for himself. And it's like, should he have gone back in time and like, you know, like done mess with the timeline? Like, he didn't really mess anything up, but being able to like control time like that is like, oh, that's selfish. But it's like, that's like the one thing he's ever done for himself. And people debate about if that's a good ending or not. It's like, my only thing is like, I just feel bad for Bucky, because it's like, Bucky also went through all the time stuff. Like, he's now living out of the 40s as well. He didn't get to live out his life either, but now he's just kind of here, and now he's also alone without Steve. That's like my main negative about it. Other than that, I think it's a really beautiful way to end the movie, and I think the ending where it's just it's been a long time, and it's Steve and Peggy dancing, that makes me cry every time. It's so beautiful. Like, it really is a very beautiful ending. I love that. It's just like, it's so good. It's like the ending of the entire first, do we call it a saga? Is that what we call it? I think we call it a saga. The Infinity Saga? Is that what we call it? I don't know. Everything up until Endgame. I love that the ending of that was just finished so sweetly with Steve and Peggy just like dancing, like, and they got their last dance like that. Took me out. And I feel like honestly, rewatching these movies, because I've seen Endgame a few times, and I've definitely seen Endgame more than I've seen like The Winter Soldier or The First Avenger. I've probably seen Civil War more than Endgame, but I've seen Endgame a few times, and watching it, I'm like, okay, but who cares? Like, he had a life in the modern day. Like, why would he go back and ruin it like that? But like, throughout his movies, he really does seem to miss the 1940s a lot, and so it's good that he gets to do that. My literal only complaint about it is that it just kind of left Bucky on his own. And I guess now we'll talk about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier a little bit, just because they're so connected and deep rooted in the Captain America story, especially with the ending of the Falcon and Winter Soldier. Basically, the show is just kind of following. I won't talk about the plot at all. I'm specifically just going to talk about the characters and what happens to them. So it's Bucky and Sam. And so Sam, okay, oh, I forgot to say, at the end of Endgame, Steve gave Sam the Captain America shield and kind of passed that on to him. That's why this is so connected to Captain America. And in the beginning of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Sam gives up the shield. He gives it to like a museum or something, or like some kind of he gives it to like someone, not to like a singular person, but like to a group. He gives it to a group, because he believes that he's just like, I can't be Captain America, like it's only ever been Steve, like that's just a lot to take on. So that he gives it to this group, and they essentially just give it to this random man who turns out to be awful, awful, terrible, terrible, horrible man. Like, oh, there's a scene in like episode 5 or 4 where, what's his name, John Walker, he has the shield and he's murdering a man with the shield, and it's like one of the most upsetting things I've ever seen. It's really crazy. The show, should I just say, as a whole, is very good. It's a very good show. It's just very, like, it's so good. Like, the message of it, I was like, wow, this is like a lot from Marvel. I was like kind of impressed. Yeah. But then like Bucky, as for Bucky, he is going to therapy. He's trying to work through his traumas. It's not working very well. Oh my god. Oh my god. There's oh there's this old man that Bucky's friends with, and Bucky finds out that one of the people that he killed as the Winter Soldier was this old man's son. I forgot about that. That is like, that kind of stuff is so horrible. Like, why would you do that? And so like they're kind of like working through that on their own. And like, oh, there's this beautiful scene in episode 2 when Bucky and Sam are in therapy together, and Bucky's like, why did you give up the shield? Like, Bucky's so upset that Sam gave up the shield, because he's like, that is everything. Okay, I'll do the scene for you. Bucky says, why'd you give up that shield? And like Sam, I don't remember what Sam says. And then Bucky says, that is Sam's legacy. That is Steve's legacy. That is everything that Steve stood for, and you just gave it away. And Sam's like, can you just accept that I did what I thought was right? Which is very valid on Sam's part as well, I must say, because that's a lot. And then Bucky's like, he trusted you with that shield, and maybe he was wrong about you, and if he was wrong about you, then he was wrong about me. And that's it's the most heartbreaking scene, because he's basically, Bucky's still trying to deal with the fact that what he did as the Winter Soldier did not define who he is, because it wasn't him, essentially. But he is basically saying Steve was such a like morally correct character, and like his judgment of character was very on point. And so Bucky's saying that if Steve judged Sam incorrectly, and he perceived like he saw something good in Sam that wasn't actually there, then maybe whatever Steve saw in Bucky that was so good, it wasn't actually there either. And so Bucky's having a very hard time dealing with that. And then whatever, they become friends, kind of. They like start training together at the end, and then by the end of by the last episode, Sam has completely taken on the Captain America name. So Sam is the next Captain America, like legit. Like Captain America 4 Brave New World, which was like just announced a few days ago, is gonna be Sam. And let me tell you, I could not be more excited for that film. I truly could not be more excited for that film. Sam and Bucky are actually so perfect together. They really struck gold casting Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan together. They just work together so well, even just in interviews. Like, those two are like everything. So basically by the end, Sam is Captain America. Bucky's very happy about that. They're all working very well. And hello, they like go to Sam's barbecue together, and you get to see like Bucky like hanging out with these kids. He's like letting kids hang off his arm. It's showing that he's in a very good place now. He's found a friend in Sam. That's lovely. And Sam is like back with his family. He's like very happy to be there, and he's Captain America, bro. He's Captain freaking America, and I could not be more happy about that. So yeah, that is like all the Captain America lore in the MCU that you need to know about. And it's just, I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. I love Captain America, who's strong and brave, here to save the American way. I guess what's the good part? Who is the giant that napped in America? We know it's no one but Captain America, who's here to prove that we can. Who'll kick the ground